Hey, Dr. Saren here, Dr. Serendipity. We're returning to Medical Apartheid, Chapter 10, onto cage subjects. This chapter focuses on the research experimentation on Black prisoners. There's a book that came out in 1998 called Acres of Skin. This is about the abusive experimentation conducted at Philadelphia's Holmesburg prison complex by Dr. Albert Kligman between the 1950s and 1970s. Most of his research were on Black prisoners. There was a quote that said, from him that said, "All I saw before me were acres of skin. It was like a farmer seeing a fertile field for the first time." So it seems like in his mind that it just was like, here, do whatever he wants with this field. There was a bunch of companies who paid him, such as Johnson & Johnson, Merck, DuPont, etc., to conduct a lot of these experiments. Prisoners were paid some, but of course not very much considering the amount of damage that was done to them. In fact, it was written here that the subjects' backs were so covered by flayed, discolored, and scarred skin from various patch tests of chemicals that the distinctive checkerboard or striped skin was a sure tip-off the man was an ex-con. So basically kind of like branded them like, oh, you must have been in prison and experimented on. Interestingly enough, from some of his experiments, Kligman was able to devise the anti-acne medication Retin-A, which did make him a millionaire. Now, one might question about consent, etc. There was a prisoner named Jesse Williams who had said that he was never given a consent form. Consent forms made sporadic appearances in prison research. And another disadvantage of this is to actually give consent to somebody really needs to understand what they're doing, which means it needs to be explained to them the risks involved. So just simply paying somebody for an experiment doesn't mean that they're getting informed consent. Plus, a lot with this population, these Black prisoners were poorly educated, sometimes illiterate, so you can't say that them just signing a piece of paper means that they had informed consent. And finally, in terms of how these prisoners were treated differently, there were some white prisoners that as soon as they volunteered themselves for some of these experimentation, they were basically applauded. And some of them who had very long sentences were now not acquitted, but paroled early. And this wasn't the case for some of the Black prisoners. And so yet again, just the difference of how they're treated in prison. Thanks, that was a quick chapter. Next, we're going to be going on to chapter 11, which is titled The Children's Crusade.